Shuckalaka kapow! How's it going, old schoolers? You kicking it old school with Russell JS, and I'm your host, Russell JS. I've got another record album versus record album going track by track. Two live albums of the 1970s. Now, I've mentioned before how when it came to rock bands in the 70s, a lot of big names were coming out like Kiss and Zeppelin and, Blue Oyster Cult, Rush, AC/DC, all coming out in the 70s. And the thing is, sometimes their records were not really, some bands, the records weren't really selling, like they should, the first three records. So what happened was there would be a thing where your concert shows were making a big buzz every time the bands came to town. It was a big buzz about how great of a live show that they were. But unfortunately, there were some people who couldn't make the concerts. Either, like they couldn't afford a ticket. Ticket prices back then, they were like maybe somewhere between, $2.50 to $5 a piece, depending on where you went. And, you could buy a t-shirt there for like $10 or something, or $5, who knows, or a poster. I mean, back in those days, when you wanted a t-shirt of your favorite band, you had to go to the concert. It wasn't like today where, I can remember when I was a teenager, you'd go to your local record store and you could find Metallica t-shirts, or you could find Guns N' Roses t-shirts, or Iron Maiden t-shirts. And those were the only places, or Spencer Gifts. And then Hot Topic rolled around, and nowadays you go into stores like Walmart and Target and pick up a t-shirt of your favorite band. Well, depends. Maybe if, say Metallica or Guns N' Roses cut a deal with, say, Walmart or Target or whatever, department store of that magnitude, of that stature. And, you could find a t-shirt of that particular favorite band. God knows I found a couple Kiss t-shirts at Walmart and a couple AC/DC t-shirts. And I found some, I found a Van Halen t-shirt up at Kohl's. But, the concert, what I'm getting at is the concert was always the main thing that really made, your favorite band as big as it was. Like when Kiss's first three albums, self-titled debut, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill, were all dropped, they hardly sold. And they were hardly playing Kiss music on the radio. But there was a big buzz about Kiss's live shows. So one of the things that, the Kiss camp did was they went ahead and recorded a live album, which they came out with a live one, which put Kiss on the map and made Kiss a big phenomenon. Now, and the same thing happened with Frampton. With Frampton Comes Alive, Ted Nugent, Double Live Gonzo, Blue Oyster Cult twice, On Your Feet or On Your Knees, and Some Enchanted Evening, and Leonard Skinner, One More For or From the Road. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to review two live albums from that era, that one of them is part of that whole thing, that whole craze about, the live album, and another live album that's kind of underrated. And I've reviewed this album before, and it went up against a bigger live, bigger live album. Tonight, I am going to go ahead and put AC/DC, If You Want Blood, You Got It, up against Cheap Trick at Budokan. And I don't know. I think, either one of these albums, I think, is going to come out the winner. I don't think there's going to be a tie. I won't have to do a tiebreaker for this. But, I think one of the two is going to come out winner. I don't know who. It might be AC/DC. It might be Cheap Trick. This album right here is definitely a strong contender. It's one of the biggest live rock albums of the 70s, right up there with Kiss Alive 2, and Ted Nugent, Double Live Gonzo, and Frampton Comes Alive. And this one, I guess they recorded while they were, let me look at the set list. Yeah, I think this was being recorded, and this got put out when they were releasing my favorite Bon Scott era album, Power Age, because this came out the same year as Power Age did, and then Highway to Hell would come out in '79. Because, you got songs here, Riff Raff, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, which I think, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be and Bad Boy Boogie, and Problem Child, they were on both. Problem Child was on both Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and Let There Be Rock. Whole Lot of Rosie. Oh wait, Rock and Roll Damnation, that was on Power Age. And Let There Be Rock. So I think what happened was they were on tour. Let's see, when was this recorded? Yeah, recorded live during the 1978 World Tour. So that was right after Power Age came out, because Power Age came out somewhere in the beginning of that year in '78. That I think because they spent, I think it was February and March of '78 recording Power Age. And I guess they were probably supporting Let There Be Rock as well. And, they were going back and forth. I don't know the whole story. I'm going to have to go back to the books. But anyway, both these albums, to me, they're great live albums, great live treasures. And, just like any of them, I love them both. You'll know otherwise if I say I hate an album. And we're going to go ahead and get started on this battle here. And I also want to remind you, if you are new to the channel, feel free to, give me a like, the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Put comments down the box below. Nothing negative, nothing nasty. I mean, if you disagree with me, just, let me know politely you disagree. Because if you get nasty and negative, I'm going to delete your comment. And of course, ring the bell for future notifications. And don't forget to tell your friends, your family, your, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your grandpa, your work colleagues, your college mates, your roommates, your classmates, anybody else that's also into old school. Help me build this channel up. I mean, I got like 168 subscribers now in almost 10 years time. I want to keep this going. So you know the routine. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave them comments down the box below. And without further ado, let's see how these bad Oscars rank, shall we? All right, let me get to the page right here. In the case of AC/DC, If You Want Blood, You Got It, versus Cheap Trick at Budokan. Let's see. I just had it here a little while ago. All right, here we go. Okay. Cheap Trick versus AC/DC. Let's see. Hello There versus Riff Raff. Hello There is a great, opener, but I have to go, I like Riff Raff better. Come On versus Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. You know what? I'm giving them both a point. Rick Nielsen rocks on that guitar and Bunny Carlos on the drums. Oh, man. Look Out versus Bad Boy Boogie. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Big Bad Boy Boogie. Big Eyes versus the Jack. Big Eyes is great, but I've got to go with the Jack. Need Your Love versus Problem Child. You know what? Love them both, so they both get a point. Like I said, these are really great live albums. Ain't That a Shame versus Whole Lot of Rosie. Yeah, I mean, it's a good cover. It's a really great cover of an old 50s tune, but you know what? I got to give the point to AC/DC with the Jack. I mean, with Whole Lot of Rosie. I Want You to Want Me versus Rock and Roll Damnation. Ooh. Yes, I love both these songs, and this is going to be killer for me. You know what? Heck it. They both get a point. Surrender versus High Voltage. Oh boy. Yeah. This is another one where I got the two songs I really love. You know what? High Voltage is great, but I love Surrender better. Good Night Now versus Let There Be Rock. Good Night Now is great, but I'm going to go ahead with Let There Be Rock. And the last song, Clock Strikes 10 versus Rocker. Clock Strikes 10 is great, but I don't know. I think I like Rocker better. So here we are. Here's the final score. Cheap Trick at Budokan with 4 points. AC/DC, If You Want Blood, You Got It with 8 points. So that means AC/DC takes the win. And I know some of you are going to be thinking like, oh, but do you not like Cheap Trick? I love Cheap Trick, okay? I really do love them. It's just that, maybe they should have had a better selection of songs. Maybe they should have put original songs instead of like Ain't That a Shame, but you know what? I mean, let me put it this way. I ended up getting a friend of my father's years ago was having a yard sale at his house, and he was selling a lot of stuff that he didn't use anymore. And we're going back to the early 1990s when I was 15, okay? And he had a bunch of cassette tapes that he was parting with because I guess, he was getting consumed by CDs. Weren't we all? I mean, I had both CDs and cassettes at the time, and I was just starting to, what little did I know, I would be starting a vinyl collection by 1994. But in that array of cassette tapes, for the first time, I discovered Cheap Trick. I mean, there was Cheap Trick at Budokan, Aerosmith Permanent Vacation, Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zeppelin Presence, and what else? Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA. I mean, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff in there that I played it so much, even for 1993, in a time when a kid my age should have been into Pearl Jam or Nirvana or Metallica. And here I am listening to this, older rock. But you know what? I always say, if it hadn't been for the likes of, say, Aerosmith, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, Cheap Trick, Black Sabbath, and Blue Oyster Cult, and Rush, we wouldn't have Metallica. We wouldn't have Pantera. We wouldn't have, Anthrax and Nirvana, Megadeth, and Pearl Jam. You wouldn't, all that classic rock and all the punk rock, it helped forge what we had in the 90s. And the 90s bands went ahead and passed it on to what we'd call new metal, like, for bands like Slipknot and System of a Down and Puddle of Mud. But, all in all, I played that Cheap Trick at Budokan tape, and I listened to it from beginning of side 1 to the end of side 2. Same thing with Aerosmith Permanent Vacation, Led Zeppelin Presence, and, Led Zeppelin 3. And I forgot what other stuff he gave me as well, but he gave me a lot of good stuff. That's for sure. But yeah, and Cheap Trick at Budokan was probably the first ever live album that I listened to in its entirety. And there I was, I was a 15-year-old kid. I didn't know who Cheap Trick was. I knew who Kiss was. I knew who Led Zeppelin was. I knew who Van Halen was. I knew who Black Sabbath was. But, I do not, there's fond memories. I do love this album. And I love this album too. It just became the luck of the draw as usual. But at any rate, that's all the time I have for this album versus album, track by track. if you don't agree with me, you should try doing your own. Like put in the comments down below when you see these videos. Tell me how. Listen to each of the 2 albums I ever put on a video, and send me back in the comments box what you think is the better album. I want to hear your feedback. Just don't be negative about it, okay? At any rate, I got to go ahead and get going. I got to go. Ollie's sitting there, and well, he's sleeping right now, but pretty soon he's going to want to eat and go do his thing outside. But I also want to wish you. I also want to say, keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill. Listen to old school music, play old school video games, watch old school movies, watch old school TV shows. Yeah, even listen to this old school music right here. Listen to this stuff as well. And keep it real, keep it fresh, keep it chill, get you enough of love, get you enough of peace, get you enough of tranquility, get you enough of prosperity, get you enough of less chaos, no chaos, get you enough of less drama, no drama. And as always, I want to wish you Godspeed. May the force be with you. And if I do not make a video before Christmas, I want to wish you all and your families the happiest Merry Christmas of all and a Happy New Year if I don't make a video by then. And of course, shakalaka kapow.